In Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, the Djinni are described as towering elemental spellcasters of smoke and air, who sided with the primordials in their wars against the gods and deities over control of the prime material plane. Though they're described as wild, they were generally benevolent, except when it came to the other elemental Djinnis, and especially their Afridi cousins. They believed in fate as a force that controls all things, and were ruled by it and their great caliph, Hussam al-Bilil Bey Nafat al-Ugayim, the Master of the Clouds. Though the game material lists the Merid as one of the most powerful Djinnis, I would argue that the classic Djinni are far more challenging as a monster. The Djinni has an AC of 17 and 161 hit points. They have a speed of 30 and a fly speed of 90, and great stats across the board. They have high saves in Dex, Wisdom, and Charisma, and are immune to lightning and thunder damage. Like the other Djinnis, they vanish when killed to reform in the plane of air. They are innate spellcasters with a spell save of 17 and a +9 to hit, and they can cast Detect Good and Evil, Detect Magic, and Thunder Wave at will, and can cast Create Food and Water, Tongues, and Windwalk 3 times per day each. They can cast Conjure Air Elemental, Gaseous Form, Invisibility, Major Image, and Plane Shift once per day each. They have a multi-attack allowing them to strike 3 times with their scimitar, which has a +9 to hit and deals 2d6 +5 slashing, and 1d6 lightning or thunder damage per strike. A damage range of 8 to 23, or a range of 24 to 69 if all 3 land. They can also choose to create a whirlwind, which conjures a torrent of air 5 feet wide and 30 feet tall. They must concentrate on it as if they're concentrating on a spell, and any creature other than the Djinni entering it must make a DC 18 strength save or else be restrained by the cyclone. The Djinni can also use its action to move the whirlwind up to 60 feet, pulling any restrained creatures along for the ride. In combat, I would start the Djinni out like other Djinnis, summoning an air elemental to attack ranged players. I would then have it summon a whirlwind on top of the healer or a powerful spellcaster, with the hopes that they become restrained. I would have the Djinni flying at least 60 feet above the melee players to avoid their attacks, and have it use its action to scoop up as many players in the whirlwind as possible each turn, moving it over them one by one. At the same time, the air elemental will have gone into a rage, and will likely be attacking any close by players that are restrained by the cyclone, which gives it advantage on its hits. Once the majority of players are in the cyclone, I would have the Djinni swoop down each turn and strike at the most dangerous of them with 3 scimitar attacks, all with advantage. Or I would have them split the 3 attacks between players if the most dangerous player has been defeated. I would use invisibility if players are avoiding the whirlwind in order to reposition the Djinni for a 3-strike attack against the most troublesome players, and then use these attacks to whittle down the other players one by one. Should the Djinni feel like it's losing the battle, it can use Plane Shift to escape, or Gaseous Form if the spell is somehow prevented. In mythology, the Jinn are invisible creatures of smoke and air from early pre-Islamic Arabian religions, that were later incorporated into Islamic mythology and theology. In myth, the Jinn are similar to mortals in that they can choose to be believers in God, or non-believers, and their actions have moral consequences. While these air and smoke spirits are accepted in Islamic mythology, the Quran explicitly outlaws and reviles worshipping them in any way. The Jinn were said to take on the forms of snakes, scorpions, and thin wispy humans when interacting with the mortal world, and they had their own society and hierarchy that mirrored many of the pre-Islamic Arabian tribal systems. Similar to demons in Catholicism, it was believed that Jinn could be summoned by sorcerers and possess mortals, though these Jinn were usually labeled as evil and outside the realm and light of Allah. Many ancient Arabian tribes viewed Jinn as spirits with links to nature and health, as well as being messengers of God's will, and therefore they venerated them as near deities. However, some argue that this association with God only came about after the Prophet Muhammad introduced angels and devils into Arabia, and the Jinn were fused with this idea. Some other scholars believe that angels were already known to pagan Arab peoples, but the term Jinn was used as a blanket term for all supernatural entities, and therefore the term was mixed with angel, devil, and demon as myths advanced and grew. Since the Quran confirms the existence of jinns, folklore and tales feature them prominently throughout Islamic and pre-Islamic Arab narratives. Countless stories have been created about jinns, so many that even listing them would be an entire video in itself. The more modern version of jinns seems to conflate them with the anglicized genie. This association might have been due to the 18th century translations of 1001 Nights, which may have happened due to the similar pronunciation between genie and jinn. This conflation has led to the terms genie and jinn, or Djinni, being used interchangeably for any vaguely Islamic being of supernatural supernatural nature, especially when created by Western audiences or writers. In comparing the myth to the monster, the Djinni of D&D is actually very similar to the original and ancient imagery of the Djinn. Both are spiritual beings of air and smoke that live on another plane in their own societies structured much like those on the mortal world. Both Djinn and Djinni are creatures with their own morality, customs, and beliefs, and both have wondrous powers associated with air, storms, and magic in general. As with the Afridi, the Djinni is one of the 2 genies in D&D based on actual mythology from real life. If you enjoyed that video, consider giving it a like and giving me a follow. And for more of my videos, you can find me on Twitch @Moglaroo, YouTube @Moglaroo Streams, and TikTok @Moglaroo Streams as well.